Alright, and welcome to this lesson where we're going to take a look at bringing web technologies closer to the operating system. And this is an important topic to touch on even if you are not a developer. So there are existing technologies out there that allow developers to port their knowledge of HTML, CSS and JavaScript over to the native side of the operating system. So think of it like this. You have your web browser. And all you need to do is strip away the tabs and the address bar and the system Chrome and just have the web page sitting there on its own. Now, after that point, you can create a HTML page and style it in such a way that you can make it look and feel like a native application. And so this opens up a whole development process that allows and embraces web technologies, which means you can rapidly create these native applications, which means less time for the developer and less fees for yourself. And also what's really great about these technologies is the fact that it allows closer communication to other parts of the operating system. So for example, you have Bluetooth connectivity. You also have the file system that you can communicate with, which typically you can't do through a web browser. But now with these technologies, you can not only use the web programming languages like HTML, CSS and JavaScript, you can also extend onto and communicate with all these different aspects of the operating system. So you're creating a native application with parts of it being a web application. So these types of applications are actually called hybrid web apps. Now some of these technologies that allow you to do this is Adobe Air. Adobe Air is for Windows and Mac OS X. You have Tide SDK for Windows, Linux and Mac. And then also you have PhoneGap, which allows you to create hybrid web apps for mobile operating systems such as iOS, Android, BlackBerry and a whole host of other operating systems. And finally we have Node WebKit, which is available for Windows, Linux and Mac, and is probably the one that's got the most extensive features because it's using the Google Chrome WebKit rendering engine. So you have WebGL, CSS3 and you have a whole host of features. So this one, if you want to actually create desktop applications, is probably the best one to go for. And all of those technologies that I've just mentioned are free to use. So why is it important to use web technologies? Well, web technologies have a great consistency between the different operating systems. This saves time, and even though you may have a few things that differentiate between operating systems, overall you can pretty much take the exact same code, duplicate it, and just make a few tiny adjustments. But literally, you are getting the same result. And so that consistency warrants the use of web technologies in native applications alone. And so one of the reasons that I'm telling you all of this is to understand the technologies available to you so you know what's feasible in your designs and what isn't feasible. So there's not really a lot that you cannot do with a hybrid web app. So for example, you have CSS 3D transformations, which immediately opens up the 3D space to you. Then also you have CSS animations and so forth that are all GPU accelerated. So even on mobile devices, you do get good performance. But however, some aspects of the CSS 3D API possibly could not be implemented on some very old devices, such as smartphone devices and so forth. But desktop OSs and the new smartphones and the new tablets, they can handle all this stuff very, very easily. So they're incredibly powerful, and we're just seeing more and more of this technology emerging. And hybrid web apps have been around for quite a long time. They've been out for a few years now, but they are really starting to be embraced because people are starting to see the power that is opened up to them via this technology. And also what's really great about it is you are in control. And so I'm in control of the environment. I'm not having to deal with all of these different browsers. So you have Safari, Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer that all have their different ways of rendering pages that cause bugs in your styling. So with this, I don't have to worry about that. So I have a fantastic control and consistency over my UI and the functioning and user experience of my application. And not only that, I can then tap into the operating system, look at the file system, so I can drag in music files and play them. Then also I can tap into Bluetooth and other connectivity devices that are connected to the operating system. So now that we've discovered that hybrid applications allow for consistency and control, what is it about this technology that is important for designers? Well, you'll realize that the only difference between designing for a web app that's going to run 100% on a server and an application that's going to be running on an operating system is that it takes a lot more dedication and time to the system Chrome, so the actual look of the operating system, and making sure your graphics mimic some of the operating system features. Overall, your UI will possibly be as custom as you want it to be, but there will be certain parts of it that you're going to need to change the system Chrome. For example, the menu bar at the top, you may need to change some of those menu options for your application. You may need to change the dock on the Mac OS X operating system, which is what we're designing our application for. And again, just mimicking that look and feel. And so that's the difference between a web app and a desktop application. Also, some of the things that aren't typical to web apps is, the close, minimize, and maximize buttons and other controls that are typical of an application running natively on an operating system. And even now, I'm generalizing on the traditional operating systems such as Windows, Linux, and Mac. But then you have the mobile operating systems that work very differently, and the application and their architecture is very different from the traditional type of application. And that could be iOS or Android or a mobile operating system like so. And again, to transition your skills, you've got to make sure that you focus on the system Chrome, and that will then make your life a lot easier transitioning from designing web applications to designing applications made for operating systems. So all these things need to be factored in, and if you do that, you will get the result that you want from the developer. But if you don't do that, you won't get the result you're looking for. So thank you for watching me in this lesson, and please join me in the next lesson where we'll look at design research and best practices.